So everybody should have written something, and then you can use it as a guide as we discuss over here. Let's see. Let me check if everyone has it. Nelson, Jerwin, Joyce, Mary. Let's see. Queenie, Kyle. Okay, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 11. There's 14 of us. 1, 2, 3. So there's people who still haven't submitted. Please submit. Then we can get to our next activity. So there's only 12 submissions here. We need actually 16 people in this class. Wait, is that me? Let me check. Class list. We increase the number of people again. Last time I was I have 13 here. So only one person didn't submit. So I won't call you out, but please submit within this session. Okay, let's see. Let's call the last one who submitted. So Mary Sire writes, I agree that your policy to protect our agricultural land as we're interesting thread. And guard against until. Okay, Mary, are you there?
Hello, sir.
Yes. Can you just explain to the class why this is kanang your answer? Like,
Oh, for me, I think katong sa question mo, sir, if agree ba if to protect our fund, of course, agree.
mm,
Kay majority of our land here, kay more on agriculture, and then as I have kanang said in my answer,
mm,
like more siya, if imo siyang wagtangon, sir ba, if naay portion na imong wagtangon sa agricultural land, daghan ang maapektan.
mm-hmm.
So, marag mo domino effect siya ba? So, if we're gonna cut it and we're not gonna protect it, so daghan siya damage mo occur ba? So, that's
Okay.
what I said. It can guard against untold human tragedy and perhaps be positioned to help others as well. And then it also generates more jobs in the
Okay.
local community. So, it reduces poverty.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
Sige. From this class, is anyone saying that we should what do you call this? Not really not protect agricultural lands, but is there anyone who says that we should also need to develop our urban areas? I think let's see here. Nelson. Nelson, are you there? I like your answer here.
Hello, sir. Good afternoon. Good afternoon,
Sige.
classmate. Actually, I didn't state any development. More likely, I just highlight more on protection of land,
Mm,
especially the agricultural land.
mm,
And it's based on my experience. I see two factors that protect, sir, in terms of the
mm,
agricultural land in the field sa mga real estate. And then there is upon processing for our compliance in terms of AIA or environmental impact assessment,
mm,
areas that classified as agricultural lands is to be considered as environmental critical area or ECCA. And
mm,
then I stated there that the NR has been very strict to this, and we are not allowed to construct under this land classification. Then secondly, we also provide studies on it, just short of justification in which we traced back the historical background of land, including the ecological value of land for the compliance of our green building in Mandaue.
mm.
Then that we justified that our land is not under this land categorization nor a green field. And this, I think, this is one of the good practice that I found that has been exercised by our LGU and other government agencies in which we as a developer has been followed. That's
So, in your experience so what was the original category of the land? So,
actually our project land under ano na, land classification of residential 2, and then
mm,
the local ordinance of Mandaue limits to residential tree.
Mm.
So that's it, sir. Considered as not greenfield. Our land is not considered as greenfield or agricultural land.
Okay. So designated siya R3, so meaning
Yes.
your building
Ay,
was
R2,
more
sorry,
than
sir.
R3?
Yes, actually, the land classification of our project site is R2,
Mm.
and then our project uh, belongs to
R3.
R3 in their
Mm.
kwan land, isn't it, land ordinance
Mm. So for the clarification of the class, what is R2?
residential 2.
Mm.
Actually, there's a certain I forgot. Sir. Actually, residential 2 is just for a two-story. Uh,
Yes, so that's what
yes,
I was hoping
two-story,
for.
and then in our case, we construct a high-rise condominium. It's beyond to that R2 level of it is indicated in National Building Code R2.
Yes. I'll
Yes,
just
it's
share with the
beyond.
class because, okay, good.
Mm-mm.
I just
Yes.
wanted you to share with the class because some of them are not architects or in the construction industry.
Okay.
So I'll just skip here to um, the National Building Code of the Philippines. We have zoning classification similar to, I think, very similar to the ones in the US, where we have different degrees of residential, commercial, industrial, and other uses. So, in pertaining to Nelson's answer, the land was classified R2, meaning low rise, multi level building structure up to, from 3 up to 5 stories. But they wanted to propose a condominium which was how many stories ba
R5
inyong
considered as R5 in National Building Code.
considers
And
R5, so
National
very
Building
large,
Code,
you they should upgrade.
since local ordinance shall govern or prevail, that's why
Mhm.
R3 in local ordinance.
Okay. So na-convince niyo na to convert to R5.
R3 only, sir. We just
R3
for
only.
local ordinance.
Okay, sorry, sorry.
In terms of occupancy, we're R5, but in their
Ah,
zoning, only R residential 3.
mm.
Yes.
So for our non building
This is something
non-construction industry.
kanang to confuse lang ba, zoning and occupancy is something different because in local
Mm.
ordinance, R3 they refer it to zoning. But in
Mm.
R5 if we ato isulti nga R5 we talk about it occupancy. That was
Mm.
sometimes to make it clarify lang sir, zoning and occupancy is something different.
Okay, okay.
Thank you sir.
Sige, sige. So zoning is more like land use and occupancy is what actually is the inside of the building, di ba?
Yes sir.
Yes, okay. So it's zoned R3, high density residential occupancy characterized mainly as low rise or medium rise building. For the inside is, let's see here, this is the zoning classification, but we'll go a bit more later on before we get sidetracked. But in general, the R5 is higher density and sort of more units now.
Yes sir.
Yeah.
High
Okay.
rise in terms of height sir.
So taller yun siya
Dollar
kaysa
gid siya,
medium
oo.
rise.
Actually,
Okay.
ang zoning gi-consider nila is more on height of the building.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. And
Okay.
the occupancy also might be kwan be included. They might be involved in the in such a case.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Sige. I will call on, let's see here. The first one who completed, Hannah. So basically just give us a summary of what you wrote and then any inputs about kanang land use that you've gone or any experience about land use.
Oh, yes, sir. Well, for sir, protecting our agricultural land, is crucial, especially millions of Filipinos actually can have or ano yun, yung diyan kumukuha ng income, 'di ba?
Mm,
Basically, if we protect our land as well, the agricultural land, we are also protecting the called the environment. We are also protecting environmental factors wherein the land, and also para sa akin much
mm,
better if, for example, we balance lang as what I've said here, na to balance all from agricultural planning to urban planning para hindi
Mm,
siya ano, yun lang.
okay, very good. I would
Hindi
also
hindi hindi po
recommend.
hindi
Yeah.
pumapasok yung kasi may fever ako. So, yun lang yung kaya ko.
Okay lang. Ano yung background mo, Hannah?
I'm an architect.
Ah, okay.
I have practiced I've practiced. I'm still practicing naman pero I'm
Mm,
already teaching in a university.
same. I also in the academe, so I think I just started one project, interior design lang, hindi naman yung building. So if you're in the academy, it's very hard to actually practice architecture. So understandable. Mm.
Yes. Pero beforehand kasi most of my practice, for example, when I was in Dubai, syempre sa Dubai ano, basically
Mm.
with regards to their agriculture, totoo yun yung sinabi doon sa ano sa policy brief na even in desert, they're actually converting desert into agricultural lands. Actually, makikita ko yun kasi sa Al Ain,
Mm.
their agricultural land is actually in Al Ain. It's a state in UAE. Most
Mm.
of their agricultural lands are there. Kasi pag punta ka sa Dubai at saka sa Abu Dhabi, more on congested na through the urbanization.
Mm. Okay, very good. We'll ask you more about your experience in Abu Dhabi. Dubai, sorry, Dubai. And I would just like to ask everyone to take note of kaning, that's why I keep calling Sir Eli as Sir Eli because siya ato ang resident pol-sci na major. So
Oh,
his answer is kanang kuan, very interesting, and you'll get a bit of kanang background po sa history sa Philippines. So Sir Eli is very involved with the NGO, and I think a lot of the kanang whenever you see kuan kaning program sa mayor in Cebu, you'll see Sir Eli put there. Sige. That's why lakas si Sir Eli sa kuan. Anyway, moving on, we're on trying to catch up with our syllabus. I'll go to our this short discussion summary of our kanang key points of what we read, and also our discussion on urban sprawl. We're recording naman, no? So, okay. I would recommend everyone to read each of your classmates' discussions or works because you will get sort of a better insight as to what is kanang going on in different parts of the Philippines and from different perspectives as well. So I'll just basically took the summary of the report here. So everyone agrees now agricultural land is important, but there really is a need to define what is prime agricultural lands, really because in the Philippines and everywhere else in the world, as we discussed a few weeks ago, population has been increasing. And also, as a result, urbanization is happening at a faster rate. So we need more land to accommodate the higher population. So at some point, we need to convert some of the agricultural lands for urban development. But the challenge there is where how do we identify the land or the prime agricultural land that we need to protect? So the report suggests four criteria. So agronomic factors, meaning agricultural factors, so soil characteristics, environmental factors, meaning the climate of the local area, the water quality, land degradation hazard, and drought susceptibility. So some areas logical that those lands must be protected, even though it's kanang it would be possible to convert it into commercial or industrial land. The third factor is non-physical factors, meaning, for example, in Cebu City, the property market is very kanang what do you call this, active. We have a lot of commercial and industrial, I guess more Mandawi than Cebu. We have a lot of commercial development. So it's very tempting for developers to sort of develop into the mountains, which is what's happening now, where they're just considering the non-physical factors like the property market and the industry requirements. And then finally, the socioeconomic factors. So in general, we're looking at opportunity cost evaluation. This is very tricky to do because you'll need people who are well-versed in the sort of the culture, the behavior of the local community, as well as people who are very much experts in economic factors like what do you call this? Is there potential for this area? Are we actually losing sort of economic activities or like um, very high economic gains by not developing this land? So there's always that tension between getting more profits and more space for our population and also preserving our open areas for future generations. Always a push and pull. Next is the conversion and reclassification of all prime agricultural land should be prohibited to the following. So once you identify that area as a prime agricultural land, they must be protected. They must kanang promote food sufficiency. They must ensure orderly urban development and then enhance environmental amenities associated with open space. So um, these are just sort of the rundown. And then finally, there really is the document suggests that the National Land Use Act and the definition of prime agricultural lands should not be seen as anti-urban or anti-development. All they're trying to do is sort of to manage development so that we don't use up all our natural resources and then we end up kanang in a position where we are now. Remember, I think currently there's still a huge sort of inflation for our like onions and other root crops because we're importing instead of growing our own. And then national land use policy should be able to promote an urban concentration strategy. Sort of, we'll talk about this later on, where what kinds of strategies and policies could help manage land development so that we still have, we maintain our rural areas while also having urban areas that are appropriate for our growing population. So the idea is to densify our urban areas and then regulate future development. So just running down here some quick statistics so you can sort of visualize where the crops and where the farmland is located. So NCR is here, the small red dot in the middle of Luzon. So Luzon is sort of like the head shape of the Philippines here. Notice that the area of farmland is here, NCR. It's not very high, or one of the lowest. This is the most kind of urbanized area of the Philippines, also the most populated area. So it makes sense that the farmland use is very low. So this is total of 71 sort of thousand hectares. This in the Philippines, the total hectares of kanang farmland use about 9 million hectares. And then we'll just try to see which land has which region has the highest farmland use. So just going down the list here, I think the highest is 891,000 hectares. So 891,000 hectares. That is region 5. And that is, where is region 5? It's 4, 5 is here on the eastern side, sort of northeastern side of the Philippines. Sort of like if the Luzon is the head, region 5 is the shoulder. So it's here. Climate-wise, it's on the cooler side. So the Philippines, if you look at the map, it's near the equator. So the northern regions are cooler. So it makes sense that you can farm more different kinds of crops in the cooler regions of the Philippines. So if you go down here to the Visayas region and the Mindanao region, it becomes a bit hotter because it's let me double check that. It's closer to the equator. So let me just double check Philippine map here on the globe. Philippines map. Yep, the equator is south of the Philippines. So the more south you go, the hotter you get. So you see the broken line here. So the more north you go, the cooler it gets. So this is where geography plays a part in not just land use, but also agricultural and economic development. So let's go back to the slides. Okay. So this is gross value area in, I think gross value of the area in agriculture. So we looked at the highest sort of land use in agriculture in the previous slide. So that's region 5 at, let's just say 890,000 hectares. But if you look at the value of region 5, it's not the highest. It's at sort of, let's see here, as of 2013, 31,000 million, or like obviously 31,000. That's six, 1 to 3. I think 31 billion, if I'm correct. That's another six zeros after 31,000. And then the highest sort of gross value of the land is, let's see, as of 2013, the highest is Region 3 here, at almost 100 billion or over 100 billion. That's Region 3 is up here, more north. And they occupy 14.59% of the share in agriculture. So there's a discrepancy, or there's a difference between the amount of land they use and the value of the land they're using. Next, so regional share to agricultural gross value of the land, and then the total agricultural land. So the lowest, as we saw earlier, is NCR because they're the most urbanized. There's not a lot of agricultural land there. And sort of the most valuable here, so if you go higher up the list, it has a higher share of the land, but the most valuable is along here in the middle, in this line here. If they're closer to this middle line here, they're more valuable. So if you go here, let me zoom in a bit. Let me increase this. Like so. Oh, bring to front. So we mentioned earlier that share in agricultural land is down here. Most valuable, go back to previous slide. Most valuable is the region. Let's see, Region 3. So if we go to the graph here, where is Region 3? Region 3 here has the highest value, and sort of the highest share in agricultural land is Region 5. So the trend is sort of going upwards. So in general, if you have sort of more agricultural land, your land is also more valuable, but there are some sort of outliers like Region 3, Region 4A, and Region 6. Okay. So we're sort of highlighting, just because you have the most amount of that land doesn't necessarily mean that that's the most valuable. So there are other factors rather than just size. And then percent share of agriculture to the GRDP. So this is the sort of the gross regional domestic product. So the highest sort of percentage share here of domestic product is in the ARMM, or what is currently the BARMM, or the BARM. So let's see here. The share of agricultural land of the BARM, the ARMM region in the graph here, it's not even on the graph. Here, it's near in the middle. So it's sort of midway. Let's see, about that percentage, 4% of the share in value, and about 5% share in the agricultural land. So it's kind of like the middle of the pack, but it creates most of the sort of gross domestic product, meaning it has, what they call this, the most economic activity, or the most kind of products that are being sold. So value and gross domestic product are also different. I guess the gross domestic product, you can think of it as the actual sort of selling, or the actual sort of goods produced. And then value is kind of like the estimated value, or like it's not just based on economic activity, but thinking about environmental and socioeconomic aspects as well. So in the Philippines, Region 3 is the most valued, but the most sort of product produced, or the most economic activity, is created in the ARMM. Okay, just sort of to share that value and sort of economic development is not defined by one factor, but it's actually several factors working together. So looking at our previous slide, the ARMM has the highest gross regional domestic product, meaning it's the most active economically. But if you look at the poverty incidence, the ARMM is the poorest, or one of the most poorest regions in the country, most likely because their main sort of economic activity is agriculture. So this says that agriculture is very much not supported, or is a very low income economic activity, because where the highest percent share of GDP in agriculture is the ARMM, it's also the most poor region in the country. So this is kind of like a reason why developers and investors don't want to have like agricultural land. And then this is a challenge for us in the urban planning and urban design field, where we know the value of these land, but it's not short term, it's we're looking long term. So this is the what the developers are looking at. Meanwhile, we as urban designers, we're looking at here the GDRP, or even the value of the land. So it's not just the sort of economic value, but various other factors as well. And then self-sufficiency ratio by commodity. So as of 2011, the Philippines is pretty much self-sufficient in rice, corn, coconut, sugarcane, not so much coffee at 50%, calamansi 100, papaya 100, tomato, garlic, and it says here onion is 100 as of 2011. I wonder what happened between now and then, where onion is probably one of our most expensive, or it's now a common joke in the Philippines, because onion has become so expensive these past few months because of inflation, partly because of the Russian-Ukraine war and other sort of socioeconomic developments. What do you call this? Internationally. Okay. So that's basically it. There's this push and pull between urban development and rural development, and it's really the complexity comes from various factors working together, and it's not just land area, it's not just economic activity, but everything else in between that sort of determines how successful or how important these lands are. And then one of those factors is urban sprawl. So in this short lecture, I'll try to finish by, maybe 15 minutes. We'll catch up again. I'll need to discuss an assignment before we end, but let's just define what urban sprawl is, talk about the negative effects, and then the growth management portion we can sort of move to next week. Okay, so urban sprawl is the rapid expansion of cities and towns. So over here on the right side, we have a map of Las Vegas, Nevada, and this is the development of cities and towns, I think over the course of 10 years. So it almost doubled in size in that amount, in a span of less than a decade. So usually urban sprawl refers to low density residential housing, so suburban development. And then it's not just development in terms of kind of new economic centers, new industrial centers. It's primarily focused on low density residential housing. And these housings these developments are usually single use zoning, or only for low density housing. In the Philippines, that's R1, and I think some R2 as well. So reliance on, and then because development is just single use, meaning it's only residential, you have to drive to go to any commercial areas to do your shopping, to go to school, and like to find your or to go to your office, because in these subdivisions, it's only residential and there's no mixed use. So this creates a reliance on private automobiles and private transportation, which also leads to another problem of traffic congestion and urban blight. So what happens when there is urban sprawl? So typically in the Philippines and abroad, sprawl happens when there's a large amount of new urban development. Residential development. So what happens is you have an urban area here. I'll just highlight. Can I highlight with my mouse for minutes? I'll just do it like this. There. I'll remove the fill. No fill. And then let's make it yellow. Okay. So everywhere in the world, each sort of city, town, they have a historic or urban core or urban area, which is, I guess, from when it was first founded, let's say in the 1970s. In the case of the Philippines, 1600s. that area has been historically where most people live. But what happens when new housing is constructed? It will attract people away from the urban area, which leads to neighborhood declines, which needs to, I think we'll start here. So what happens when you create new suburbs? The population shifts to the suburbs because it's more attractive, more green. And then because people are leaving the urban core, we create going out into the suburban areas. That local community, like that barangay or municipality, loses their kanang tax revenue because tax is paid by the constituents or residents of that particular town or urban area. Then what happens is there is sort of lesser services. In the case of the US, lesser bus routes in that area because there's lesser people. And because there are lesser people, the businesses also leave. So they go out into the suburbs, like outwards into the suburban areas. And what you have is the neighborhood declines, which also further, what you call this, incentivizes the population to go out into the suburbs. So we see this. I'll just change my slides a bit. We also see this in Cebu, like so. So Cebu has been growing sort of at a rate of 100, about 100,000 people every 10 years. So from the 1970s, we started out at around 300,000 people. As of 2020, we're at around 960,000 people. So this is just a quick sort of info over here. The total city area of Cebu City is about 315 square kilometers. And as of 2020, we're already at 960,000. This was from 2015, before the update of the 2020 census. So this is a map of 1984 Cebu. Notice there's a, what we call, what's the English word for pahak? There's a large amount of mining happening over here and deforestation as well, because this is where I think we get our, if not mistaken, sand, gravel, and also concrete. I think this is the effect of mining activities even way back the 1980s. So this is where the city gets its materials for concrete, sand, gravel, so basically for urban development. And notice that this mining area seems to grow as well together with the city. So there's some protected land here which is no longer protected, and this also will have significant environmental impacts into the future. Okay, so notice Cebu City is about this big, 1984. 10 years later, pretty much the same. And then by 20 years later, it's already a big arm here going into our kanang, if I'm not mistaken, this is going to the Talamban area. Let me just highlight that with a shape over here, like this. So this part here. Okay. Oops, sorry. Like so. And then it only, I guess you can say worse or better, depending on your perspective. The development has encroached into our kanang natural areas. If you see, the mountain is still pretty clean from the 1980s, but by 2014, you can see suburban development in our mountainous areas in Cebu City. And most of these are really subdivisions. If I show you in Google Maps real quickly, oh, it's already 2 o'clock. If you look at the slope, I mean the steepness of the hill or the mountainous areas, so they're really at around, I think this is at least elevation 300, maybe 400. And then all of these new developments you see are housing. So this is Sky House Cebu. If I click that, that's housing. If I go over here, this looks like just the beginnings of a new subdivision. And over here, let's see, looking at the Talamban area, these are very much subdivisions. So you have Talamban Viejo. If you look at the road pattern, these are clearly subdivision lots. And you also have something like this over here. And then on the western side, even more clearly subdivision lots. So what's happening in Cebu, as I mentioned sort of last week, is that we have this suburban sprawl development happening. Basically, we'll just call it residential sprawl, so it's more specific. So people are living further away from where they work. The work areas are here and sort of near the Fuente Circle and also the Ayala Business District. So let's say something like this. Let me just clear that measurement. So everybody works here in sort of this zone of the city, but then everybody lives up here, here like that. So if we develop further away in or up into our mountains, it will make our traffic conditions worse, and it will make our um, agricultural land less protected, and then become more vulnerable to natural disasters like landslides, heavy rains, flooding caused by heavy rains. And then where does this lead us for those of you who live in Cebu City? And then for those of you who live in the less urban areas, let's say Sibalom, for example, your goal is to manage growth in a way that you don't end up like Cebu City and Manila. So you still have a lot of, I guess, yeah, it's still very green. You still have a lot of trees. You have a lot of agricultural lands. You can see these are farmlands. And then deciding where to preserve and where to develop will really be the key challenge in urban design and urban planning. See. So talking about the future, one of the biggest or most popular topics when it regards to urban design and planning is also climate change. So as of, let's see here, internationally, climate change has been a topic of discussion since the 1980s. I think only recently people have been like sort of getting more and more aware of it, mostly because we can finally feel the impact of our kanang industrialization. And for the most part, this isn't such a this is an issue that's out of the control of the Philippines because the highest share of sort of CO2 emissions, number one is China at 29%, followed by the US at 15%, and then the European Union at 10.5%. So this is meaning the main cause of, or the main, I don't want to feel, I don't want to point fingers, but most of the CO2 emissions are happening outside the Philippines. And for the people living in the Philippines, we sort of just have to work with it. That even though we try our best, it's still good that we reduce our CO2 emissions and like do our environmental planning properly. We still have to face the challenge of the fact that most of the pollution is coming from countries outside the Philippines. So we need to be prepared for that. So it's all the more it's important that we manage our resources here in the Philippines, because if we don't manage it well, we'll be having problems locally, and then we'll also be having problems internationally. So that's the sort of the main reason why we need to be careful with our urban development. And sort of an update. This map here is from the Cebu City Planning Office, and it's still a proposed map for development areas. It's not yet a zoning map, but it's just what they want to do in this current administration with the land that we have. So we have our protected landscape. This could probably be prime agricultural land or just kanang open areas. And the main function of this land here is to sort of absorb rainwater and prevent flooding here in the downtown area. So the goal of the upland area is to be protected, untouched, preserved. And then we have the uptown area. This is where all the residents live. We have Guadalupe, Talamban, and I think the University of San Carlos also here. So the idea is to mix residential uses with some smaller commercial and institutional uses. And then we have the Midtown area, which is the key sort of commercial area in Cebu City. We have Ayala, we have IT Park, and we have the Fuente Osmeña Circle, where our hospitals, our other offices, and shopping malls are located. And then finally, we have the last two areas, the downtown heritage core. So the downtown is already experiencing urban blight because it used to be the center of Cebu. Now it's sort of um, very kanang deteriorated, not very clean. It's full of kanang sort of the, I don't want to say forgotten, but the not so desirable areas or markets. Basically, this is where the low income market shop and also live. And then here we have a proposed new downtown area, the South Road property. So we have SMC side, a bunch of sort of high-end commercial areas. The goal here is to mix in some low-income to middle-income areas as well. So it becomes a space not just for the elite or the high-income population, but also the middle and low-income population, sort of merging downtown heritage core with downtown SRP. And then hopefully densification in these areas, meaning we create a more compact urban development, will help us protect our upland areas here. So that's the general idea of like what's happening in Cebu. And we have our sort of very clear report that highlights the importance of preserving our uptown areas. And then I think all of you already answered why we should protect our agricultural areas. Okay, so there's only 15 minutes left. 15 minutes left. Let me sort of prepare you for our activity for next week. So mapping growth in Cebu City. I tentatively put here at 8:30 a.m. I'll probably just change that to 2:30. So our activity will be for the whole session, probably next week. I'll try to get it before. Maybe we can try to get it by 1:30 p.m. So we have an hour for a lecture and checking. Oh, it didn't say. But our activity will be population mapping in Cebu City in particular. Okay, say. So we have 15 minutes. The idea is in the next 15 minutes, we'll download all the files you need to complete this activity so that when we start next week, we start running. We start the ground running or hit the ground running. So we don't have to wait for anyone to download the files. I'll put the file links here. First, we need the barangay map of Cebu. So barangay map of Cebu City. This will be in a QGIS format. So let me just prepare that for you. My drive. Let's go to QGIS. Okay. Oh, no. Back. Go. Should be under my data. I think everyone already downloaded my data, if I remember correctly. Let's see. For those who downloaded the my data folder, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll just give you the link right now. So what we need is the Philippine admin shape files. So I'll probably just give you the whole folder. It's very light. It's not even 1 gig. So I'll copy this. Copy link. Yeah. R2 single attach or duplex. Is that R2 or R3? Sorry. Claro kay, di naging ko familiar sa codes. Anyway, so you should be able to get, if you already have a copy, then good. If you don't, just click on this link. And then inside this link, you'll be able to find the Philippine admin shape file. So I'll just go to documents here. Where is my QGIS folder? It should be on my desktop. QGIS, my data, vectors, and then Philippine admin shape. So if you open, let's see here. I think we need shape 3, if I'm not mistaken. Oops. So all you need to do is you can drag it into QGIS like so. And then you'll have this map open in QGIS. So we just need to isolate the Cebu City part. So this whole process might take some of you 5 minutes, others might take like 10 minutes, but we'll go through this together next meeting. I just need you guys to download this file, this session before 2:30, so that I know that everyone already has it. Okay. So if you already have it, please raise your hand. Otherwise, please download it so we can start on time, or we can start earlier next week. Okay, next. Yeah, sorry. Hi, Jen. Go ahead. Hello? You mean done downloading? Okay. No problem. Sige. So I'll stop sharing my screen. Also stop recording as well.